You're the only other superhero I know that could dispatch a fly or a cicada. Just what?
That's true. If anybody doubts that, of course, they could always talk to Chris Bono, my comedian friend who opened for me on the road, who actually did live see me catch a fly with chopsticks. And that is a true story. Okay. And I'm just so grateful there was a witness that saw it happen, because I hate to have to recreate it.
Did I get wrong? What is the martial art you are expert in? It is
Kung Fu. I studied Kung Fu for 27 years, and then that
is a dumbass fly. That's a dumbass fly that decided to test you.
Yeah, don't bring it, Brundle. I'll take you down. Whatever, This is.
It is time to snatch the grasshopper.
I got your number.
The grasshopper from my hand. No, wait, the pebble.
That's right.
Okay. Here's my point, Hal. We are.
I understand the social, just the generals. We'll deal with it.
Right.
You know what? I'm going to give you a checklist of all the just references you'll need to do just to get that for next time. Don't worry.
Okay. Okay. What my point is, I was holding out for a hero, and here you are. Because we are. This was a frustrating day yesterday, wasn't it? Between the DOJ, everything going on at the DOJ, obviously the January 6th commission nonsense, voting righs. I know you're happy clappy like me, so please, help mommy.
No, well, I essentially there's a lot going to unpack in the voting rights aspect of it. There are 3 or 4 bills that are stacked up. The one that's going through right now, and the one that Manchin's opposed to, is the broadest one.
Yes.
The idea is that there may be a fallback one that covers most of what we're going to do, that will be necessary to push back against the bills that are being passed across the country. I am a big believer that these bills that they are passing across the country are not effectively going to diminish the Democratic vote in 2022 or 2024, no matter how hard they try, because Democrats are going to be buttressed against it and focusing very heavily on making sure that if there's an ID issue in an area and you have to have one, we're going to make sure all the Democratic voters have one. We're, if there's an issue with you can't go on certain days, we're going to make sure that the other days when you can go, there'll be plenty of ways to get people to the polls. The Democrats are going to handle this. All of these rules, and I'm really convinced of this, all these bills that are being passed are not to countermand what they really believe was some sort of election attack last time, but because Trump voters that now make up a major portion of the party as it falls apart are not going to show up for an election they don't think is valid or will happen or will be stolen, and Trump won't let that go.
They didn't in New Mexico. Right. For Deb Haaland's seat, we won in a landslide. Yeah,
that's right. That's all this is about. I am telling you, the Republicans, we're going to secure our elections from fraud. And there's that's just dealing with the big lie that Trump has been pushing. What do they do if they just let that stand? They have 2 options. They can respond to Trump saying that and going, that's not true. You lost. We won legitimately. There's a lot of Republicans won their seats. You lost. That's how it works. These were legit, and they will be next time. And we will run people and blah, blah, blah. They can do that, which they will never do.
Yes, and I like. I was going to say I liked your happy clappy tweet. You said 65 Dems in the Senate is a way better solution than hand wringing over what West Virginia wants.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right, and the idea that anybody's like the fact that we're having a conversation about getting rid of the filibuster is like this clamoring thing right now. When we have a 50-50 tie in the Senate, and you're wondering why people aren't racing to figure out, and it's already imbalanced. The Senate is already imbalanced in the favor of Republicans because these tiny little states with fewer people than Santa Monica, California, have 2 senators.
But what do you make of that? But what do you make of that? Nearly 70% of West Virginia wants the infrastructure bill Joe Manchin's not for. Nearly 80% want the voting rights bill he's not for. So when you say what West Virginia wants, what West Virginia wants is not what Joe Manchin's going to do. So what do we do about that?
Agreed. Well, the difference is that that's why I think, quite frankly, that there is room for him to shift on this. He's just got to play footsie with the bipartisan thing for a while because of the nature of the voter and the activist class in West Virginia. Because again, a lot of people are they're more concerned about who they're running against next time. like Manchin's logic and how he's describing it is off the charts, but it is very West Virginia. Even though the state will say that, even though if you poll people in West Virginia, you're going to get the people who don't hang up. And that's not a significant member of the voting pool. Like, there's a lot of people who go, would you like to answer some questions about infrastructure? Click. But if that's a big part of, dealing with the polls needs. But it's in line with the rest of the country. That's the reality. Republican voters are 60% for election reform and infrastructure, all the things that Biden's going to push.
And you're 60%. You're from Kentucky, so you speak deedly state.
Yes, I do. I speak banjo.
Deedly.
Right.
Okay. So this made no sense. Manchin met with civil rights leaders on the voting rights bill. Manchin called the meeting very, very good, respectful, informative. And then he said, no, I don't think anybody changed positions. We're just learning where everybody's coming from, and we're learning on everyone's position. I'm very much concerned about our democracy, protecting people's voting rights, and making sure that's done, and making sure we know how fragile we are as a country. Are you going to vote for voting? No, I am not. Like, he says the right things, and then he
right.
Yes.
Yep. And it would be nice if he can't, or maybe seemingly can't clarify right now whether he means I'm not going to vote for this bill, but if there's this bill plus amendments, or we're able to pare it down, or it doesn't cover certain things. Their big fear in West Virginia and in a lot of these, especially rural states, is the idea of illegals voting. That is the single greatest lie pushed through all these races across the country. That is the primary one. And it is what drives people to pick people in primaries in a lot of these states, and including West Virginia. Right. It's baloney. It never plays out. But that's literally the primary focus of what they're looking for in Arizona in the audit right now, is this idea that millions or hundreds of thousands of illegals voted is what they've been saying. And it isn't true. But anything in the bill along the lines of pushing back against voter ID or those kind of things is just grist for the mill for these people to make that lie stronger. That's the Democratic plan. They just want to they want to wipe out Republicans by allowing illegal voters. And that's what and that will be the hanging part for a lot of this. Now, the real answer would be, of course, get everybody a national ID. That's a photo ID that you get for free from the federal government that allows you that works everywhere. Right. But the Republicans want it, but won't go for it because it's the mark of the beast and Satan and something about the Roman Empire and Christ.
Blah, blah. Right. So you speak specifically, specifically Kentucky. So here is Mitch McConnell on voting rights. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The voting rights bill is intact. The law extends well into the future. What this rewrite of it does is grant to the Justice Department almost total ability to determine the voting systems of every state in America, which they're trying to do directly through H.R. 1. They would try to achieve indirectly through this rewrite of the Voting Rights Act.
He said the Supreme Court did not strike down the Voting Rights Act.
Yeah, that's
weird. He said it's still the law. What they struck down was the preclearance part of it that applied only to the southern part of the United States, which is where it was needed. But because the Supreme Court concluded conditions that existed in 1965 no longer existed, so there's no threat to the voting rights law. It's against the law to discriminate voting on the basis of race. So I think this is unnecessary. Oh my gosh, that's funny. Because,
the day they said that might have been true. It certainly isn't now, because as soon as you turn the law off, the criminality comes right back. Right. That's the point.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what one judge said is laser focused on black people. It's like, we're going to move the time on after Souls to the Poll Day later, so they can't go right from church to the. I mean, it is laser. We're going to. I mean, look at what the post office did. They took drop boxes and mailboxes out of minority neighborhoods specifically. Right.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and that's and ultimately, I'm telling you, from a Democratic side, the get out the vote. I don't think there's any better get out the vote motivator than trying to take someone's ability and right to vote away, specifically based on their race, color, their sexual orientation, their gender, their whatever the immutable characteristics. Right. That personally, I think everybody I know, that's the single motivating factor of somebody not taking that right away from you and doing it so egregiously. So I actually think, from a motivational standpoint, as far as the volume of voters, this is just like running against Trump in a general, in a lot of ways, in 2022, that the voters are really going to come out. Yeah. The problems Republicans have is that there are like hillbilly white trash like myself who grew up in areas where they live in trailers up in the hills. It's a big, long drive to go in to vote. There's nobody's coming out there to help you vote and any of that stuff. So, and those folks voted for Trump. There's more of them, just those folks, than there are total black people in the entire country. And those people will be just as affected by these changes the Republicans are making in the voter rolls in these red states, especially, more so than almost anybody else. So it's going to mute their vote. It's not going to help the Trump voter feel motivated to go back to the polls. He's not running next year. They know they're losing seats.
Yeah, and you obviously point out, too, just they don't care that they're just hypocrites on every subject. You tweeted, so Greg Abbott thinks the government can dictate what you do on private property for your own safety and the safety of your workers. And to codify that, he has passed a government regulation. Please tell me about liberty again.
Abbott's doing, this like, you can't use vaccine passports or any kind of ID that references vaccines, which, by the way, airlines are doing, and that's nonsense. And you can't, it wouldn't hold up in court because one can do it and the other one can't. Like, if I wanted to run as a restaurant, the idea that Rand Paul is part of the party that, and Greg Abbott is in line with Rand Paul's belief systems, that they believe that if a restaurant wants to deny black people entry or a country club wants to deny Jews entry, they have the right to do that because it's private property and liberty comes first, and they would just go out of business because the market would speak.
But you can't deny unvaccinated people, right? I mean,
exactly.
So
that's right. And or ask people if they've been vaccinated if you want to enter your space because they're going to endanger them or your workers. And his response, the biggest part of this is his response is, I'm going to write a regulation to stop you from doing it, which is supposedly what they run against all the time. The government intervention. You should be able to do your own thing. It's the weirdest. And it's all for the anti-vaxxer QAnon Trump crowd, who, by the way, believe that Trump invented the vaccine, but also
for the hoax.
They wouldn't take it.
For the hoax that doesn't exist, so they're not going to take it. But okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. We're off to
it's the dumbest
conspiracy
theory ever.